Good evening and welcome to Ghana Shot. Today we're going to talk about the great global reset, and we're going to talk us through this subject and to give us some idea of what's happening in the world and what is going to happen in the world. I have with me Brigadier Arun Sahgal, who is virtually my guru and from a long time. So, good evening and welcome to Ghana Shot once again. We're going to talk of
Thank
a very interesting subject
thank
called the
you, sir.
global reset. Before I dive into this whole subject, do you think there's a global reset going on?
I think it is. I think for the first time, what we are looking at a major power, global power, trying to resolve issues through discussions, discourse, and through negotiations rather than by power and influence.
Fine, sir. That's a very important statement in the China-India context. And I thought, today in the evening, I was reading a article from the South China Morning Post, and it put up something very interesting, and I'll first like to show it to everyone. Okay. Now, this is the article, and this article is about, can the Philippines emulate China-India border deal to defuse tensions? So this is something that the Philippines are saying, look, let's see what uh, India did and how do we use this model to defuse tensions. A whole lot of discussion, but I thought I'll put across something which this man, Don McLean Gill, he is a professor in De La Salle University, Manila. What he says, he discusses a lot of things, but this is what he says. He says India is the only member of the Quad, US, Japan, and Australia, that has effectively and physically pushed back China. He cites incidents between 2021 and 2023, where India reportedly pushed Chinese troops back from Tawang district of the northeastern Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. China only responded to force, shows that their interest in peace with India stems from the realization that India is the only country that has managed to give them a bloody nose in a physical confrontation. And this is important what he says. No other democracy in the world has been able to do that. So to say that last week's agreement was achieved only through communication is not the case. India had to show some muscle for China to recognize that there should be peace in the border. And that's what he's added. But and that's very important in the context in which we are speaking, because most of the time we feel that China is the stronger power militarily, diplomatically, and economically. So it has to walk all over us. I think there are different opinions, and this such an opinion coming from a third party is completely puts light on the fact that India has some weight in the world, and that this weight is different from what it was, say, a few years back. As I was talking to Brigadier Sahgal just before this whole episode started, he gave me a different viewpoint, but a conflicting viewpoint from a different perspective. So I'd like you to put that out
Okay,
or read it
thank you.
out.
There is a very interesting commentary which has just come out today in the RSIS, and after this author discusses the whole thing, he comes to a basic conclusion, and the basic conclusion that he comes to is that this whole agreement demonstrates the capacity of a rising power to manage territorial disputes through institutional frameworks and diplomatic innovation in era of global tensions. Now, this is an interesting part. Here are two major players who have resolved their issues through diplomatic innovations and institutional framework, and when there are tensions all around. And it goes on to say this is a model for traditional bilateral negotiations plus multilateral framework plus CBMs which can manage regional disputes. So In effect, this is a message for the rest of the world who are particularly look at Gaza, Israeli conflict, look at Ukrainian conflict, which are trying to find via medias to resolve disputes. Now, this is he's saying is here is a framework which is talking about bilateral negotiations, multilateral frameworks, plus CBMs to ensure that we resolve our bilateral disputes. So this is something which is very important and this is very serious. And added to what Shankar just mentioned about the fact is that we have been able to persuade and impress upon China, not so much in terms of only through negotiations and diplomatic efforts, but like the Jai Shankar said yesterday, is through muscular deployments and a strategy that we shall not move. We shall stand firm on our ground. We are not going to give in to you. So this is something which is very important development. I would like people to understand this whole nuance of what has happened. This is not simply an agreement between two countries that has happened, but this has created a framework for negotiations of people who must stand. If you have got strong beliefs, you have got a strong understanding, and you back it up with credible power and influence, you can make the other side see reason. I'm not saying there is a victory for one and defeat for the other, but this is a victory of reason, which says that unnecessary continuous coercion is not a credible policy anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so that you hit it on the nail on the head. It's a composite strength which India has or displayed, diplomatic, economic, and military, right? Which China respects, and it has responded. After all of us say China respects strength, right? And it has responded. And like you rightly said, uh, there is a change in the global, way of doing things. And this change is not only because of the China-India pact, but a lot has happened in BRICS also.
Yes.
And as BRICS was going on, we also saw the Iran-Israel pact going on and what USA was trying to do. It is in that context I would like you to now put your views on the great global reset which is going on. How do you view it? And based on what you say, we'll take it further as you put your views across.
Okay. So let me start with the bilateral perspective. See, the Chinese was look at India from two perspectives. One was a bilateral and regional perspective, and secondly, India was seen as a part of a competition between China and US. Core interest of China was to gain psychological advantage by asserting military and economic power and undertaking gray zone operations. The second part was to through this whole issue is was to send a message to the United States that economically and militarily weak India is of no consequence to the United States and is hardly a strong strategic partner. But what has happened is India has stood its ground. What India said was that until and unless the border issue is resolved, there cannot be any bilateral relationship. In this regard, we earlier resolved a large number of issues, about four out of the five or six difficult points, the points of
Friction
where we
points.
uh, yes, and now we had two issues left. One was Depsang and other was Demchok. Now we have been able to resolve this. So what has happened? What has happened is that we have now created a scenario in which the Chinese assertive posture along the border is been contained. We have reached a resolution, and we have seen all of us have seen how Chinese have withdrawn from Depsang removed their temporary structures and have now pushed back. Now, this is the scenario, and now the next phase, of course, is the special representatives who will now initiate talks of restoring further, push back further of the Chinese who have come in, what I call a new status quo, which they are trying to create, and to go back to status quo ante, which is the situation as in May 2020. Now, this is a part of negotiations, but by standing firm on its ground, India has shown to the Chinese that India is will do everything possible in its own strategic interest and will not succumb to the Chinese coercive pressures. Now, there is a message, like I was telling you earlier, a message is a message in all this, that you have to stand firm for your beliefs. Number one. Number two is, it's important for everybody to understand is that at the end of this whole episode is India is now agreeing to restore bilateral relationship with China, but that bilateral relationship will be not restored on Chinese term or anybody else's term, on terms that both will have to understand it meets their national interests. And towards that, the statements being made by the Indian leaders, particularly the finance minister, on the economic relationship with China, she's very clear that it has to meet our core interests. We are not going to open up Indian markets to the Chinese just like that. So to understand the point that Chinese have, I'm not saying Chinese has come, but what I'm trying to say is by standing firm on our beliefs, we have made the other party realize that it is not easy for China to practice what I call muscular revisionism against a strong emerging power like India. Now, it has got multiple effects. Multiple effects is that how do we proceed with our relationship with China in future? It have to be more nuanced. We have to ensure that certain degree of give and take is taken. But I would perceive that Indian political leadership will be much more comfortable with dealing with China from here onwards on much more even terms, uh, rather than in terms in which we have had a situation where they're sitting inside our territory and coercing us, and then we are entering into some kind of economic negotiation. Now we'll be entering into whatever arrangements, economic arrangements that we want to enter into, from a position that we have been able to achieve our initial core interests. The special representatives will take on from here, and we will thereafter also enter into new set of CBMs because the previous set of CBMs are no longer valid, and we will now work to ensure that peace and tranquility on the border remains, and that is taken off the bilateral relationship. The bilateral relationship from here on has to be built on common interest, cooperation, economic partnerships, etc., 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 on all those matters in which two countries who are not antagonists to each other but are cooperative partners will indulge in relationship. So this is the part one of the whole issue. You have any questions, sir? I'll
No, sir. We'll take it up later. I think.
So the second issue is, how will the other powers look at this whole situation? See, and here I will like to address the issue of the US perspective. The US perspective of inducting India as a strong strategic partner in Indo-Pacific is based on the centricity of the Chinese challenge. I have always maintained that we in India are, I mean, particularly some of us, are not very clear on the perceptions of United States and perceptions of India in meeting the Chinese challenge. From the Indian perspective, Chinese challenge is a bilateral regional issue of in South Asia centric, and we are not part of the construct of China, uh, uh, China containment strategy of anybody. For us, we deal with China as a neighbor. We deal with China as an influencer in the region, and we read with China as a power with whom we need to have some kind of good modus vivendi to proceed further. And we did not see China as a challenger till May 2020. But beyond that, we did start looking at China as a challenger, but only in the construct of what it was doing in our neighborhood and on what was it doing on the borders. It is India did not see China as a part of a larger geopolitical global strategic competition between two powers, bipolar world in China and United States. But United States, on the other hand, wants to induct India as a part of a strong strategic player, agreeing or not agreeing, but posing a direct military come strategic challenge to China in the Indian Ocean region, that is west of Malacca, to ensure that the Chinese power is diffused in two fronts, and the United States and India, along with the Quad and other partners, are together in China containment strategy. Now, here the rub lies interestingly. Now, if India is to build up bilateral relationship with China, which indeed is what India would like to do, which indeed the United States is even doing, is even when it has a confront, contain, and contest policy vis-a-vis Chinese, and they keep forever talking about the fact that the central challenge to the United States is unipolarity is coming from China. They are looking to induct India as an important player. Now, India, the higher and after, will have to take a call. Do we want to be a part of a United States centric global strategy of unipolarity, which includes centrality of containing China, or we look at China as a regional player who has to be managed and whose expansionism has to be contested and contained where it is necessary, and also have cooperative relationship with China where it is required. So this is the dilemma which we are. I am not too sure whether the United States is going to be too happy. Right now, United States in a state of flux. They do not really have any political leadership for the next 10, 15 days, 20 days, because they are going through elections. And there is a huge amount of flux in their mindset. And secondly, their mindsets are also getting engaged with Gaza and Ukraine issues. They are not going to look at, but be sure, and I repeat, be sure they will come back to this and they will demand from India what India's stand is going to be. And this is going to be a critical issue for our government to manage. And this will not be done directly, it will be done by multitude of means. We are seeing some of those means already, cases being filed, people being declared known terrorists, etc., etc. All kinds of pressure, Canada issue, all kind of pressure is being done. But the important part from Indian perspective would be that how does India manage its relationship with United States in the backdrop of improving relationship with China? I'm not saying a relationship with China is going to go hunky dory all of a sudden. No, but if you remove the angers, if you remove the contestation part from our relationship and move it towards to a more even framework, then the issue comes about is how is the United States going to react? Now, that's the central issue that we need to address. I'll stop.
So, what you actually put across is, firstly, India needs a two-toned policy. We need a two-toned policy to China, right? A certain amount of cooperation and also a certain amount of contestation, and to ensure that they don't expand too much into the Indian Ocean. That's the first point. The second thing is the the relationship with USA is going, to my way of thinking, a bit into uncharted territory, or rather back to old times, where we don't know now whether we're going to be real strategic partners or not, the way it was thought of, say, even 1 year back, right? Uh, So your video's gone off for some
No,
reason.
I know. I put it off here. I just want to have water.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Please continue drinking your water. So in between, there's no issue. So we're going to have a two-tone policy with China, and a large part of this policy comes from the detent which is going to be extended. This detent which we got into. So that's that. And USA we need to be prepared for the indirect approach towards us. But the whole story now I will put it the Indo-Pacific. Let me define the Indo-Pacific the way I look at it.
Okay.
The Indo-Pacific today is actually the Indo part is more active than the Pacific part at this point of time. While the Pacific part, South China Sea and Philippines and China, a lot of activity is going on. But the greater activity is in the Indo part, the Gulf of Hormuz, I mean the Gulf of Aden and the Strait of Hormuz.
Agreed.
And
Mm.
with what is there and or your energy is at a crisis. So in this new setting which has come out, do you think we need to have a new partnership with USA as far as the Indo is concerned and delinking it from the Pacific? Is
Uh,
the Indo-Pacific fully valid the way it was earlier conceived?
okay. So the see, uh, if we have a good relationship with China, and let's put it, a good working relationship with China, which is not antagonistic and which is not coercive, which basically means is China accepts India as an important player in the region, then the Indo becomes that much simpler because the flows of the trade, the energy, and other resources will not get hampered by the activities which could take place in the new scheme of things which the Chinese and the Pakistanis and other players they're trying to create. They're trying to create Gwadar. The Chinese, the Pakistanis are trying to leverage the Chinese through new submarines. Your bases are coming up in Sri Lanka and all those, and then we are also looking at Bangladesh becoming a. So there is a push by China to create a new uh, places on ground as part of his Western look strategy of his plan as a part of its power projection capabilities, having realized that, like I always continue to say, that in the East it is hitting a wall because there's a strong United States led alliance system which will not allow it to push forward that way. So here it looked as India as a part of a US-led alliance system and part of Quad, etc. And it always, whether we said Asian NATO or we did not say Asian NATO, but it looked upon India as part of that. India, on this part, has done a lot of work recently. We have created ITU2. We are creating IMAC. We are trying to reach out to UAE, Gulf states, and we are also trying to create new relationships, particularly along with Iran as well as Indian North-South Trade Corridor, etc. So, from Indian perspective, a peace and tranquility on our western front, western borders, western maritime borders or western maritime areas would be a very major issue, a major change, and where India will then be able to provide not only security for the sea lines of communication, India will also ensure that our natural resources are pushing forward properly. The problem, as far as United States and India are concerned, particularly in this region, is that United States has no heft in this place. United States Central Command and Africa Command are too far away to make any difference. We saw what happened during the Houthi crisis, how the Indian Navy had to be deployed to ensure the security of our sea lines of communication and also the trade. So, in this regard, if we can bring about a peace and stability over here, through collaborative efforts, we do two things. One is we ensure that the sea lines are secure, are not being unnecessarily targeted. And number two, even when Pakistan gets a message that there is not going to be any kind of estrangement, the estrangement between India and China, it cannot be exploited by Pakistan. That creates a little degree of room for maneuver for India to ensure that our security dimensions get a little reduced, our security perspectives get slightly undermined, reduced, and India can now spend more effort and energy on economic trade and development. So to that extent, I think it's going to be a very important development from India perspective, and even Iran, Charbahar, etc., if they can now become a much more economically viable spaces, and we can get access to Central Asia, where I did a long time back, I did a big study, and we looked at the fact that if India had a critical access to Central Asia, we could go do a trade of worth about 20 to 30 billion dollars in a year. uh, and these are very important areas. So if we are looking at the Eurasian landmass and connectivity with the Eurasian landmass, and we are looking at connectivity with the West Asia, and we're looking through connectivity to sea as well as land connectivity, this kind of a development can prove to be a very positive win-win game changer for everybody. So I look at it from this perspective, but like I said, these are early days. Nothing has happened. Nothing is going to happen. But we need to be working in that direction for, let's put it this way, for strategic gains rather than looking everything from a strategic contextual perspective, a contesting perspective.
Yeah, I think so, sir. And I think, like you rightly put it out, India has a role to play in the North Arabian Sea and also in the Gulf and the Red Sea in conjunction with USA. And I think that will keep going because at the end of the day, our good relations with Iran also matter.
Yes.
And you do give a conduit to USA to converse. And there's no one else who can speak to Iran really today the way we can. Probably we have the best credentials to speak from a neutral point of view. And why I'm saying this is because the Iranian, the chap Khomeini, he has
Hmm.
said that India can play a good role in bringing about peace in this region. I'm quoting the Iranians. This happened about, I think, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks back.
Mhm.
But now with this kind of a balance which India has to do between China and USA, because there's a new thing which has come up. Where do you see our involvement with Russia and what happened in BRICS? Because a few
Yeah.
important things
Okay.
happened
Good
in
point.
BRICS.
Excellent point, sir. See, what has happened in BRICS? BRICS have created, a, let's put it this way, a new framework of global economic order in place. It is too early. It is too fractious at this point in time. But what has happened? We had five BRIC members. We added four more. But added to that is we added 13 partners this time.
22
These
totals.
so total is 22 now. Now, what has happened? What are the critical elements that we get from this particular summit? We see the framework of a new economic and trade order emerging. What are the elements of that? One is what I call the clear. The clear is what is called the faci- exchange facilities of trading. I mean, you use your word SWIFT for sending money from one place to the other. Now you will use Clear. And what will you exchange in Clear? You will exchange Clear in your currencies is through this mechanism of transfer of money, etc. The second element what you are looking at is the insurance. You are sending trade. You are used to you use the Lloyds and you other international companies for securitizing your trade, etc., for ensuring your goods, other elements. Now, what you will do is that the new reinsurance companies that are being set up under the BRICS Development Bank, or the new development bank, as they call it, that will ensure that your trade is secured through this means. And the third issue is the uh, is what I call is the uh, is the clear uh, uh,
Insurance
insurance and the
and the grain exchange also.
and grain exchange issue. So what is happening now is basically is what is saying. Look at from Indian perspective. Although a very dear friend of mine, who's a very senior economist, totally disagrees with me, but I put across a hypothesis to him. I said we have Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Four countries, all major countries in Southeast Asia as partner countries in BRICS. It has got India as well as China. Now, if India wants to trade with Indonesia, it had to go through earlier on through the mechanism for ASEAN. Okay, it had to go through ASEAN oriented mechanism, or it had to go through the normal mechanism of international multilateral institutions like SWIFT and dollar oriented trade. Now you can do trade with Indonesia in your normal currencies, in barter system, or whichever manner you want to do it. And also
One
we
to
are
one.
now, huh? Sorry,
One to ones. One to
one to
one.
one.
One to one.
Or we can do it with Malaysia, or in this set of four countries, and create a new mechanism. I'm not saying that it can happen tomorrow morning, but these are just the issues that opportunities that open up. You have to start looking at these opportunities from that perspective, rather than getting steadfast and saying this is not possible, this is not possible, this is not. See, uh, our problem basically is this, particularly in ASEAN, is this, that we are not part of RCEP. Okay, we are not part of Indo-Pacific Forum. We are not part of TPP, and we have no institutional mechanism apart from the fact that we have a normal
Normal
trade
trade relations, sir.
normal trade relationship. Okay, now the question is, even those are not working. ICAS study came out which in August indicated that India is 0.1% in the perceptions on the mind of the ASEAN countries, despite India having a look east and act east policy. So India has to move. If India has to push its trade forward, it has to have relationship with them. Now, I just put across a point to you. I'm not saying I'm jumping the gun. I'm simply saying it tomorrow or day after or 2 years down the line, we have an economic relationship with China, and work India, China, and Indonesia, for example, work together to create equities in for example, factories in India which produce goods, and India can send it to all these countries. How will that make a difference? It will make a huge difference. Because what is the problem with Indian economic major thinkers is they are wedded to the Bretton Woods institutions. They are wedded to the Western way of looking things. They are not looking for intrinsic regional scenarios. Now, I'm not talking about look at it. Look at it the other way. Look at this UAE. We have what is our trade? We have signed a comprehensive economic agreement with UAE. We are signing similar kind of agreements with Saudi Arabia. Look at the way our improvement in our trades will take place. So if you are going to push towards an $8 to $10 trillion economy, I am afraid, I am not an economist, but logic tells me I have to create new avenues of trade and relationships which provide me both institutional finance, manufacturing facilities, markets, and new trade institutions which I can exploit to build my country's resources and my country's capacity, so that I can grow at 9 to 10% GDP growth rate. Our current perception is, and the current view is, unfortunately, is that despite best effort, despite whatever we do, we will never be able to cross 7.5% GDP growth rate, because institutionally there is no investments coming. Yeah, it's not coming enough. So this is what my story is. So my story basically is this: is BRICS, the way it is institutionalizing itself as, and the most important part, which I missed, sorry, is the back end connectivity to the global south. Now, global south is being bought over by the United States, China, Russia to extent, through investments. But India is making not investments alone. India is becoming part and parcel of the growth story of Africa, because wherever India goes, India buys into that country. We are partners with that country. We just do not go invest, build a road, and come back. Okay, we send a couple of prisoners over there from our prisons and make roads like the Chinese do and come back. No, India is invested in those countries. Those countries feel much more safer with India. They feel India is a rational, democratic state, which with a reasonable, not reasonable, with a great sense of perception of law and order. So this is where India gains, and this is what we also gain at the end of the story. So from our perspective is that, how do we look at our this opportunity which is now emerging? It's not emerged, it is emerging. How do we relate it on a much broader strategic scale, which you are trying to discuss today? There are multiple opportunities, there are multiple options available. The issue is, how do we grab them? Do we continue thinking on our old methods, or we start looking at things, like I say, like a red team, new innovative ideas of engagement?
I go with you, sir, that we have to do something different to get different results. You can't do the same thing and expect better results. I think to that extent, I go with you completely. What I do visualize is, while the BRICS forum has opened a few doors, but we are not sure as to what lies behind. And I suppose it's in fairness of things that we have to work our way through these with an open mind, but with a clarity of purpose and a clarity of thought. Otherwise, we might end up with something worse.
Absolutely,
We might
absolutely
be
correct.
right. On that, I have no doubt at all, because this detent and the BRICS platform has given you something. Where do you see Russia in this game? Because Russia also has a lot of equities in in Africa. Russia has a lot of equity in, even in West Asia. Also in these countries which we have spoken of, which are part of, after all, a large number of these countries have come into this deal the way they have because of Russia. So let's talk of Russia, India, and probably what Russia offers in terms of our equation with China and our equation with USA also.
Okay. So, sir, the first part is, we have to recognize the fact, whether anybody likes it or not, Russia has been our old, time tested, and a credible partner. Uh, Russia provides us that support, backup, that nobody else can provide. I mean, whenever India requires any assistance, or it requires any great degree of cooperation in critical areas, of strategic areas, Russia has been there for us, and India has to recognize it, and Indian government recognizes that. We have bought oil from them, and today what has happened as a part of that oil, that we have become the largest supplier of finished energy products to European Union. We
EU.
are the largest supplier, and they are even shocked. They said, but it's not something which they are clever guys. The Europeans are clever guys. They said, okay, let India buy the oil, let India refine the oil and into products, and we'll buy it from India. No comes in terms of what happens in terms of sanctions on Russia, etc. So there is no calm on that. So this is something which we have to. Russia is an important player. In geostrategic terms, the Russian relationship with China and our thaw with China will help create a greater degree of synergy of interest, particularly, I am not saying of anti-West interest, but I'm simply trying to say in areas where we need each other. And those areas are in terms of Eurasia, in terms of China, in Iran, some degree to West Asia, and also it provides India with a certain degree of leverage of saying that look, we do not, we have other, when we talk about India's strategic autonomy, India is not then gets a certain degree of what I say a strategic space to play with, and not getting totally enamored or unconstrained by what happens as part of the Quad or the Indo-Pacific. India will continue to be part of Quad. India will continue to be part of Indo-Pacific, but India as a player, particularly when it looks West Asia onwards, the Western onwards, or in the Eurasia or the continental landmass, India will get a much more strategic heft. To that extent, India is an important player. Second issue is in our relationship with Russia, and the fact that Prime Minister Modi has undertaken a very, very difficult but a challenging and I would say a task which if he succeeds, he would have put India on a very, very high pedestal in the global system of trying to bring about peace and stability between peace, not stability, peace between Ukraine and Russia. And today, everybody recognizing the fact that there is only one player. China tried it to do it with Brazil and try to come out with some kind of a peace proposal. That's not worked. The only person who is working is is India, which has the capability of reaching out to both the countries. So to that extent, India as an important global player, India as a powerhouse in terms of its intrinsic strength, capabilities, and its diplomacy, is playing a very important role. Uh, Third issue is a good relationship with Russia was always thought to balance China, but with the China issue slightly on the back burner, building up a confidence with China, India-Russia relationship can can help in creating the degree of trust that India is looking for vis-a-vis the Chinese. And if that trust happens, then what we are looking at is a global system in which India is part of RIC, India is part of Quad, and India from going called a swing state or a swing state like a lot of analysts talking about, India will then truly emerge as a global balancing power. We'll
We
balance the
spoke
two
of it.
sides. Huh?
You remember we spoke of it
Yes,
five, 6 months back.
we spoke of it earlier, remember, in one of our earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
So India will then emerge as an important balancing power. And that balancing power will suit India's interest. I have no comment saying that India will suit India's interest, because India is not going to take sides. India is going to say, hey guys, let's concentrate on building this globe economically, politically, etc., etc., and let's not fight amongst ourselves. Forget, diffuse this whole notion of unipolarity and bipolarity. Let's focus on multipolarity. You have your spheres of influence. Everybody has a sphere of influence. Let's focus on global growth, global development, and in this exercise, take global South as a strong partner, because that is where the numbers are going to be in the future. If global South is not developing, I'm afraid the world is not developing.
But thank you, sir. I think we've covered a large swath, and you naturally towards the end, you actually gravitated to what we had discussed about 6, 7 months back.
Yes,
That
sir. Yes, sir. I
swing
remember that.
state, from a swing state, India has become a global balancer.
Yes.
In my view, I think this event of the detent with China and the BRICS, where it's going, and the fact there's an important interview of Farid Zakaria, who said on India Today, where he says the only country and the only person who can bring about peace between Ukraine and Russia is India and Prime Minister Modi. And with the Iranians saying that, look, we look to India to bring peace, and knowing that Prime Minister Modi has got good equation with with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also. I think we are today no more a swing state. I think we are already in the balancing role. It's a matter
Totally
of
agree, sir.
how we look at it and how we behave from hereafter. And it largely it behaves on how our economic issues get played out. Because militarily we are there. I have no doubt about it. We'll continue because our path is okay. We'll be slow, steady, but we will be there. That's what it is. The last point I want to touch, sir. How does this entire story, which spun out in the past 3 weeks, impinge on our neighborhood? Because let me explain it. A
Hmm.
lot of our neighbors have been playing India against China or China against India. They've been playing each other out. One. Number two, a lot of our neighbors have been under the impression that it is China which is the greater power, and we'll always, because we are their neighbors, we'll always stay off India because of China. So that
Oh.
equation has changed. That equation has changed quite a bit. How do you
Mhm.
think this will play out in our neighborhood?
Very interesting question, sir. I was also debating this issue in my mind when I was writing my notes. Uh, One fundamental point which we have to, which we have, I mean, to consider, and also in our discussions with the Chinese, be very clear about. We cannot allow the South Asian countries to play one against the other in their balancing games in the region. The more important part is, like we discussed earlier, that if India's power of negotiations, India's power of intrinsic strength, India's power of credibility is recognized across Asia, then I think I am very sure our neighbors are not blind to the India's power and influence. And this power and influence will contain some of their ambitions to play the duplicitous game of playing India against China. So I personally believe this will have a bit of a calming effect on our neighbors. Uh, we have seen the what happened during the SCO summit. The Pakistanis, for the first time, had refrained from making any statement which could have spoiled the atmosphere during the summit. They reached out to our leadership, despite the fact that after that there have been a couple of incidents in Kashmir, and also some statements being made on the Kashmir Day by the Pakistani leadership. That I would suggest to your viewers, those are what I call pro forma statements one should overlook. But the more important fact is Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka will get a message that creating a wedge between India and China and trying to gain from that wedge is a past story, is a story which is not going to work, and it's not going to at least bring them any benefits. It's important for these countries to have normal relationship with India, normal relationship with China, and India and China also during their discourses have to come to an understanding is that we are not in the game of strategic one-upmanship and strategic gaining gains on the other's expense, but we are here in this game to sort out our interests. And if we can discuss and come to a certain degree of an understanding is what are their core interests, and how are they pursuing it, and how the two countries can work together in a cooperative fashion to ensure that these neighbors of ours who are not particularly well developed, who have got weak political systems, are helped and supported in becoming more stable states. And also both countries decide not to exploit each other, exploit a contestation between each other to their advantage to in these countries, and make them guinea pigs. It'll be a very, very major success story for us. And I personally feel that if India and China can also join hands together on a broader framework of dealing with the situation in Myanmar, and I particularly say Myanmar because China has a strong play. We are equally involved in Myanmar. We have strong interest in stability in Myanmar. And if we can bring about jointly together a certain degree of peace, tranquility, uh, and not allow the situation to be exploited by extra regional powers, you understand what I mean.
Yes, sir.
It will be a very, very positive issue. And even for Pakistan, uh, we uh, we can sit together and have make Pakistan understand that they can have as much of CPEC as it wants. It can do what it wants with the Chinese relationship, but do not bandy the relationship as a part of India containment strategy, because that will not work. I think that's something, a message we should be able to give, and that's something which we India and that can be a gain in the future going forward in management of our neighborhood policy.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think we have covered a lot of ground. With your permission, could I take a few questions? We have about 10
Sure,
odd
sir. Sure,
minutes, 10, 12,
sure.
yeah, sure. We'll go through because, sir, uh, we have taken an all of people stand in the present face off with China. This has strengthened the all of government actions in matters related to the present confrontation. Your views on this?
My view is very simple, sir. We have taken a just stand that we had articulated from the very beginning, and I'm glad that the other side has seen reason, and I'm glad that there has been a positive development. From our perspective, I think it's important to build on this stand that we have taken and move forward based on how we perceive our interests and how we can then cooperate and collaborate not with China but other players as well. So the whole idea basically is this: India is at the cusp of development. India is at the cusp of becoming an important power. India is the cusp of ensuring that the poverty and the this thing of our country is addressed. So I think if we can at this particular juncture factor positivity in our relationships to ensure that India's growth story remains intact, I think India would have gained a lot. And all kudos to our current system.
Thank you, sir. The next question, how the Africa is going to respond to China and USA in this present scenario? Will Africa may come close to Bharat?
See,
You
sir,
did speak of it. You did speak of
so
it, but I would like you to amplify.
what we have to understand is, we talk in terms of binaries. Countries do not come close or far away from companies basically cooperate or not cooperate, or have relationship based on their interests. So what is in our interest, we talked about, we our interest is to have a stable, developing global south, which is in everybody's interest. We are also interested in that their mineral resources are not exploited. They get the fair share of their mineral resources. We are also interested in there is a development that takes place. Once that development takes place, it will mean more investments, it will mean more growth, it will mean more trade. So it is in India's interest. So India, like everybody else, is interested not in exploitation of Africa, but India is interested in the growth story of Africa, so that Africa becomes as developed as everybody else in the world, and therefore Africa becomes a more investable, more important uh, trade and economic partner to the world. So it is so the growth story of Africa that India is interested in.
Thank you, sir. This question, of course, yeah. Uh, will it be fair to say that here that the display of a matching might by Bharat at LAC or deployment LAC is what made China finally decide to go back from LAC? The work of military here forced China.
Sir, I don't think this is the time to take credit or discredit to
Yeah,
anybody.
I
I
think
think this
that
is the
that's the
time
more
to be
that's
humble.
the mature way of yeah.
This is time to be humble and look at it from the perspective that both sides have decided that unnecessary continuation of standoff is unproductive. It's not good for either country. So it's better that we resolve issues and move forward to a more mature and more economically stable relationship. I think it's a good sense that has prevailed on both sides, and we should celebrate that.
Yeah, I think so. So, um, Western and Eastern powers have realized that they can't take Bharat for granted, despite the deep-rooted dislike for Modi and admiration for Indra Ji, our ecosystem opening up to new realities.
So I don't think we should get into these kind of issues at this particular juncture. I mean, look, all nations have set of people who are pro, against, ideologically different, and they have a different perspectives. The whole idea basically is this thing is that at the official level, how do we relate to each other and how do we proceed each other, and that relationship is defined by actions of the governments. There would be elements within the governments, with elements within the society who do not like us, who look at India from an illiberal perspective, blah blah blah. Well, that's their thought. India is very clear. India is very clear. We are a responsible democratic nation, which is of 1.4 crore people, which is only one purpose: to work towards the betterment of its people. Whether it's opposition, whether it's the government in power, everyone has got only one purpose. And I do not think there are certain perceptions, there are political perceptions, there are political ideologies, etc., which might not go along with somebody else's ideology, but that's their perception. I mean, it's an issue that will happen everywhere. In every house, nobody is on the same page in a family. So similarly, in India also, everybody is not on the same page. We have a difference of view, but at times when the family needs us, we all stand together. And that's what is required from India at this particular juncture. India is, like I said, is a cusp of development, is a cusp of growth. India is an emerging story. It's time for us to sink our differences, work together for the glory of the country.
Yeah. Uh, USA continues to do business with China despite enmity or envy. Why can't India manage a cooperation with USA? That's the question, sir. And like you said, we need to.
we, we are managing our cooperation with the United
Uh,
States. Yeah,
uh,
it's not an issue. We're
yeah,
not managing. I mean,
yeah.
it's an ongoing process. There'll be hiccups. There'll be problems. Everybody, it's like getting a new bride in the house. When it's very not easy
Mhm.
to deal with her. Yeah, we are new bride in the group. We are new guys in the group. They are trying to understand who we are. We are trying to understand who they are, and they are trying to adjust and become over a period of time we will become more comfortable with each other, which we are. Incidentally, we have moved forward one quite a lot. We signed all the agreements, we signed defense cooperation, we are part of partner in development processes, we partner in supply chains, we are in FDI, everything. The whole idea basically is this, that over a period of time we will develop much greater cooperation, much more understanding of each other, and that is something that we need to both work together.
I just like to add, sir. Have a look
So,
at this. Have a look at this cartoon. All those who are watching this. This cartoon was made 2 years back by someone from China. The Chinese are very clear in their perception of what India will be. It is just that they have acknowledged it 2 weeks back. And it's not something, which is new. I've been showing this cartoon from the day I've seen it, and it's not gone away from my way of thinking. So we have to adjust to this new reality because most of us don't believe what we are. We don't have faith in what we are. Our intrinsic capability is something which we have to start realizing. So this is a question, though he says, General Sir, I'd leave it to you to answer. On decoupling of Indo-Pacific, please define broadly the boundaries of Indo part and the boundaries of the Pacific part. Why did you come with this idea of decoupling now?
Hello, I didn't say decoupling from Indo-Pacific. What we
No, I
basically
did.
said,
So I would say we said there's two different constructs actually, the Indo part
yeah,
and the Pacific part.
yeah. The basically if you look at the Indo-Pacific, it has got three specific areas. One is East Asia and South East Asia. Then there is a buffer between East Asia and Indian Ocean called the South China Seas. There are three seas which are collectively called South China Seas, and that is also Southeast Asia. And on further from there across the Malacca right to the east coast of Africa is the Indian Ocean region. So we are not decoupling, but the question is the perceptions of partners are differently attuned, focused on these three areas, and that's the important part we have to understand. The United States and its alliance system are focused on East Asia and Southeast Asia, right now Philippines, and going towards the South China Sea. India's interests lie in the Indian Ocean and going towards the further west, going to the west east coast of Africa. So these are the issues. That's why we are looking at ITU2, IMAD, the relationship with Iran, our energy sources come up. When India looks at trade, just have a look at the Indian trade figures. Majority of our trade goes westwards and doesn't go eastwards. It goes. It's 25 to 30% goes, but 60 to 70% goes to the westward. So it is relativity of from Indian perspective. I'm not talking about American. American we look at it from different point of view, but as an Indian, I'm looking at it is the weightage of my interests is more Western focus than Eastern focus. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so. So, and to put it, give it you a little different context. Say 3 years back, 4 years back, when the Indo-Pacific construct came into being, the Quad came into being, the focus was on the Pacific part, the Western Pacific. Today, Indian Ocean part is also equally on fire.
Yes.
Your complete energy lanes, everything, whether it's Gulf of Aden or the Strait of Hormuz and the
Houthis.
Gulf
Thanks to
or the
Houthis.
Red Sea, Houthis, right? So it's in a balance, and so the whole shift has changed. The Indo-Pacific concept itself has changed, and every American will agree to it. So should we, and we leave it at that. Now, this is a interesting question. So it says, due to China, India possible settlement on LAC, the US will now have to control China through Pakistan and Afghanistan. Views of both of you, please. Saab, you take a call.
Your
Where
view,
I
sir.
go?
Your view.
My view is very clear. So Pakistan and Afghanistan are in no position to control themselves, far less control China. It's out of question. Right? There's a game of big boys. It's between India, China, and USA, how they sort out their differences. And you can't ignore Russia. There's these four people who have to now sit on the table and start talking in one way or the other. Whether the table is a quadrant or a bilateral thing is to be seen. That's my view, sir. If you
Absolutely.
have any more.
So I totally agree with you. Only thing is that India and United States will continue to work together to ensure that the credibility of its interests remains in place. Like I said, these are early days. Nothing has changed. Only one element has
Nothing has
changed.
changed.
So it's work in progress, and in this work in progress, India and United States will remain aligned, cooperative, and building up on their partnership, not against anybody, but like I always maintain, that's my standard line: maintain peace and stability in the region, keeping the commons open and preventing one power to have the coercive rights over other players in the region. So that's the important part.
Yeah. And what I'd like to just mention and, tell everyone, it's just the first step of a big step or a big lot of steps which have to be taken, which is be taken. Even that is not fully executed. We are at the disengagement state. After that, we have to go through some amount of de-escalation. Only when de-escalation takes place can we start thinking. Forget de-induction. I'm not going to talk of de-induction at all.
Yeah.
Just de-escalation. When these two steps happen, only then we can start thinking of anything else with China. So I think through the next 4 to 5 months, we're going to see a lot of activity. Whether it goes in the right direction or not is to be seen. That's a different story, but we will see. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So, as we know, GE has been penalized for delaying jet engine. Can you elaborate what are the critical technologies we need from USA, which it uses against Bharat?
Yeah, I mean, we have an ISET program. We have the defined large number of critical technologies which we want to get from work together with United States, not going to get only get work together with United States, quantum, AI, underwater domain awareness, etc. So it's an ongoing process. I mean, delaying is a commercial deal. 404 engines were supposed to be provided. Commercial deal, the GE has not provided them. They have delayed, so they'll pay a penalty. It's a straightforward commercial deal. Nothing is to be. There's no politics involved in this. If we had done this with the Americans, Americans would have done exactly the way we have done with them. So it's nothing new. What is important is what is the status of 414 engine deal? Have we signed all the documents? Are we in the position to get the supply chain working? That is a work in progress, and I think the earlier that issue is sorted out, and we see facts on the ground in terms of deployments, the new facilities coming up, etc., etc., and some shifting of equipment and resources into India. That is where the whole ball game lies, and that would be basically for me as an individual will be the first step of Indo-China strategic cooperation in co-production issue, and co-production to me is a sign to non of deep engagement between two partners. The transactional relationships are not partnerships. Transactional relationship is like you're going to a shop buying anybody. Yeah? You can buy it from any shop. Yeah? That doesn't matter. But if you are doing a co-development and put together a production lines and putting together, that's important, right? For example, just to give you an example, that we have started repairing of the not U.S. Navy ships, but U.S. Navy support ships in India. So that's a positive development. Tomorrow, if you set up MRO facilities for predators, that's positive development. That's something which is important. Similar, these are a number of issues are there in the pipeline, but I will not go into that detail. But the fact of the matter is that if India and United States can work together on these areas and set up quickly and look at it as a part of a process of continuing our partnership, then it will be a very, very huge positive step. I think we are working towards it. There's nothing to feel alarmed. These are procedural matters. They take a little time, and I've had the privilege of meeting at levels within the American government who remain positive, and everybody remains positive. So it's nothing to decry one or the other immediately. Now China, India become bye bye and all that nonsense. No, no.
And the
Our
vote
relationship
about time.
our relationship with the United States remains important and credible.
Yeah.
That's an important message.
Yeah. How come we are selling oil products to EU but not ASEANs?
Please, 90% of the products ASEAN buys is from India. So it's not true.
Yeah.
Not true. Not true. Not true, sir.
Yeah. There's a view, sir, which Do you think at some point of time India would have to no choice but to choose a side, US alliance or Russia China alliance? Also, is current Indian policy is similar to or different from non-alignment of Nehru?
So let's start walking before we start running. Let's build up our relationship.
I like that, sir.
That's not good. It's good to sit down in a home and speculate on these things, but I don't think people are involved more here and now. They want to build current relationships. There are huge elements involved in it. When we say Quad or Indo-Pacific, etc., we have to look at our relationship with Australia. We look at Japan. We look at Vietnam. Look at Korea. So these are multifarious things, sir, and these things all take time and effort. And the important part is that India is emerging as a credible player, which is a strong economic power or economic heft, which people are wanting to invest in India. People are keen to invest in India. People want to trade with India. So that's an important part, and we have to build up that kind of capacities and capabilities. So this is something which is important, and for that we need to congratulate ourselves that we have brought ourselves to a level where people are looking at us as a credible economic, political, and I would dare say to some extent even a military power.
Thank you, sir. I thought we've gone through a lot of questions, a lot of interesting questions, and we have had a very interesting discussion. Your last use, and then we'll say Jai Hind.
No, thank you very much, sir. I really enjoy being on your platform, and I'm honored to be on your platform. So now that I've left all official work and I'm on my own now, I'll be happy to be more often on your platform and discuss issues which you want to
Oh,
discuss. Thank you.
thanks a lot, sir. We'll look forward to your participation more. For me, it's always a matter of learning or when I discuss things with you. You come up with new things and on a broader scale, which many of us, can't imagine. With this, I must thank you on behalf of all my audience and to all audience for seeing this show. Please send it to your friends because what has been spoken here is beyond the normal. I don't think you will get all this in any discussion or on any newspaper or on any analysis or any magazine because this has gone beyond the normal. With this, thank you, sir. Good evening and good evening to
Thank you, sir.
everyone
Thank you
else.
very much.
Jai Hind
Thank you.
and thank you all.
Yeah. Pleasure being on your show, sir.
Thank you, sir.